in contact with U.S. industry as the situation progresses.
All right, thank you very much. I'd now like to call on Mr. McCaul, our ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Abrams, I think we really have a historic opportunity to transform what's been a socialist dictatorship that has been a humanitarian crisis into a democracy supported by freedom and the people. And at the same time, I think for the first time in decades, have an influence on Cuba in the Western Hemisphere. And as I look at the Russians in Venezuela and Iran, the Chinese, that worries me about our backyard. But I want to ask you this question. How important is it for the United States Congress to recognize the legitimacy of the interim president, Guaido?
Mr. McCaul, I think it'd be very important. I mean, we have 51 countries, including the United States now, that recognize him as the interim legitimate president of Venezuela. I think it would be really valuable for the Congress to join that crowd.
And Mr. Elliott, I will continue to work in that effort. The Chairman, let me ask you about the military. I think, the military, I think the majority of the military supports the people and President Guaido. I think, unfortunately, the ones at the top are, there's corruption, there's narco, terrorism, cartels. How do we get the military to move away from Maduro to support the people and President Guaido?
This is the toughest question. And our answer thus far has been first to pressure them, sanctioning many members of the upper ranks. Secondly, to tell them continually that there are off-ramps if they decide to side with the people of Venezuela. Thus far, obviously, that has not happened, except in a few isolated cases. But we are hearing a lot of discontent in the military. I mean, for one thing, if you're a general and look down at the ranks, you know that your own people in the army are starving. And what about their brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers? So we think that this opinion is spreading within the military, that the current situation is untenable. And we hope that there will be a decision on the part of many in the military, first, not to support the Maduro regime, but second, not to block desperately needed humanitarian aid.
And I was impressed by your optimism about the situation, that eventually that will happen. Mr. Raul, on the humanitarian aid issue, we saw the pictures of the roads being blocked off by Maduro, not allowing the humanitarian assistance from the Lima group that agreed to send this down there. We just met with the president of Colombia, and he was talking about this very issue. How can we get that assistance into Venezuela to help these desperate people? And have you thought about possibly using not just land borders, but the sea as well?
Thank you, Ranking Member McCaul. We are indeed looking for ways of distributing the assistance safely and effectively within the country. We are in daily communication with Interim President Guaido and his team on finding out what those avenues to do so. We are also committed to pre-positioning goods and supplies in other parts if that's necessary. We also are looking at scenarios of flying things in as the situation permits. But right now, today, the Maduro regime is not allowing access. And we do hope that through the diplomatic efforts we're making and the internal efforts by the interim President Guaido and his team will change that scenario shortly.
Well, and I think as the people of Venezuela see what their, I would say, illegitimate president is doing and what the military is doing to block this humanitarian aid, that they will rise up even more so and hopefully return this country to a democracy. It could be such a great country with such great natural resources. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. McCaul. Mr. Sherman.